This is still Report Desk Africa, and of course we're bringing, conversations right now down to Nigeria. Now, with the recent proclamation on the removal of fuel subsidy by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigerians have been hit with a new reality. The cost of petrol has more than doubled, and as a result, so has the cost of living. But while the income of most Nigerian workers hasn't significantly increased, questions are now being asked about what the future holds for most workers. Let's take a look at this package compiled by News Central's Bernard Akede.
The fresh subsidy is gone.
The removal of fuel subsidy in Nigeria has had a significant impact on the country's workforce and overall productivity. This policy shift, aimed at reducing government spending and promoting market efficiency, triggered a series of effects affecting different sectors of the economy. From rising transportation costs to hikes in prices of essential goods and services, and now Nigerian workers face challenges posed by phasing out of subsidy and declining productivity in the country.
Going from 184 in Lagos to 488 was a shock. It threw people off emotionally, mentally, because the first question is, how in the world am I going to make ends meet, right? And that question rippled across everyone, regardless of your level in the society. Everybody was thinking the same question. The salary that I have been barely managing to make ends meet now has to be stretched even further.
This removal that is causing price hikes most likely will cause another level of inflation. Currently, our inflation is over 22%, if I'm correct. Last time I checked, I think about 22.4%. And we are looking at, this number skyrocketing a bit further.
While the Nigerian Labour Congress has threatened to go on strike if the president's decision is not reversed, others have called for an upward review of the minimum wage. But will either of these, if implemented, make any difference?
Before we actually get there, I think businesses need to look at how to increase their revenue. Because for some organizations are currently struggling, right? So to ask them to increase their wage bill when the revenue is not increasing does not look realistic.
To cushion the effect of the hike in price, employers have been urged to put certain measures into place for their staff as well as for the benefits of the organizations.
So I've heard of companies doing transport adjustments. People are giving increased flexibility. So companies that were working 2 days from the office, from home before, are now working 3 days from home. Companies are closing earlier. So you close maybe at 4, so that if you're driving, you don't have to spend so much time in traffic.
Already we are considering cost of living adjustments, okay? But cost of living adjustments will only make sense if the organization has also increased its earnings.
As Nigerians continue to adjust to what seems to be the new reality, all eyes are on President Tinubu and on how he intends to strike a balance in the face of the evident struggle the masses are passing through and the cost benefits of fuel subsidy removal. Bernard Akede, reporting for News Central.
Well, that was News Central's correspondent, Bernard Akede, giving us an update or a detailed explanation of what the fuel price hike has been like in Nigeria. Now, I would say that a lot of people saw this coming. We all saw this coming, but there was a certain kind of hope that it wasn't going to have this much effect. But anyways, joining us to discuss this is News Central's correspondent, Adesewa Odusoga. Thank you so much, Shewa, for joining us.
Thank you, Blessings, for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Shewa, this is not a situation of they said or we're seeing from afar. It's something that is happening, and we're all suffering the effect in one way or the other. So my first question to you would be, how have you been dealing with the current situation of things as a Nigerian worker? Just speak on our behalf.
Yeah, speak your mind. Just say it.
What has it been like?
We can relate.
I think the laughter from Dapo already explains the situation, because it looks as though the situation has gone beyond wailing, and then you have to start laughing because it's really worrisome. We actually saw this coming, but then I feel like we didn't see it to have much effect on Nigerians, because nobody was expecting more than 200% hike in the price of fuel, even at the removal of subsidy. We saw that, judging from the reports that Bernard packaged, most of the respondents were talking about an increment in salaries, but we have to be realistic. The employers, I beg your pardon, are also, having their businesses in Nigeria, and we know what it is now. The cost of even running the business in the first place has gone really high. So if you're telling an employer to increase its salaries, you also need to help reason on how to also increase its profits, because the cost of running the business has more than doubled. We know
but then speaking realistically, it doesn't exactly have to be an increment in salary. It could be reduction of work days, and that's what so many employers
that would
are not
make
seeing.
sense. Reduction in the number of days that you appear in the office would work, but it doesn't work for everyone. For the first time, I would love to speak for people like you and I, Blessings, because as a reporter cannot possibly work from home. Because how do I even, begin to tell you the actual realities on ground when I'm in the confines of my room? So people like you and I, how do we begin to cope with the current situation? And then we have other people like frontliners, like doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and the likes, who cannot afford to work from the confines of their homes. So, what solutions do we now create for people like that? Because these are emergency responders. And then, like policemen, people that you know that they cannot afford to, have to work remotely like you have other people doing. As much as employers would want to reduce work hours, but that just cuts the part of transportation alone. Now let's talk about food prices. We know that the prices of food has also increased, prices of services has increased. Something as little as even cutting your hair from the barbing salon has also, changed, have a change in price. Yeah. So this is just not about transportation, the cost of transportation alone. It also cuts across everything that money can buy, as long as you are in Nigeria.
Well,
so I'm just left to, I don't know what the current administration wants to do about this, because as much as economists and even some journalists would have to applaud that the subsidy removal was a good decision in the right direction, we also have to face the realities on ground. We know what the removal of subsidy is now doing to an average Nigerian. I remember when I took a ride from one of these e-hailing services, and I was trying to, have a conversation over the phone with a colleague about, how, the explanation, the economic explanation behind the removal of subsidy. And then the man, he couldn't just wait for me to end the call before he started to, say something like, you can say this because you are educated. What about people like me who do not understand the economics behind the removal of subsidy? All I understand is that I bought fuel for 185 today, and then the next day is 488 naira. And then that's just Lagos. We have other states that are buying for as high as 600 naira. So he said that you're beginning to make work difficult for me, because I know how much it is that I buy fuel. I know how much I charge my customers. Now, customers are not even coming to us, because some people would prefer to stay in their houses and just do phone calls, if possible, rather than leave their house and then use their services. And what does this say? The demand for their services is dropping, as well as the money that they eventually take home to their families.
Shewa, anyway, I know that there's so much you want to say, right? Which of course, but because of course we're pressed with time. I just want to cut in a bit, and just on the side, in this part of the world where we come from, we usually greet a lot, particularly those of us from the western part. So recently, I've had people tell me, "Echo subsidy."
I just knew it was coming.
And I'm like, I don't get it, but I understand. Now, let's backtrack a bit. Now, since the announcement of the removal of the fuel subsidy in Nigeria, the impact has been felt almost immediately across sectors. I remember that day when the new president announced it, there were no queues at the filling stations. Yes. That evening, immediately the announcement was made, we could see queues. Now, some have criticized the removal, that even though it's important, yet the approach, is seen as premature. Do you actually share in this sentiment?
Yes, I agree, because I don't think, with the situation on ground, it wasn't like he met Nigerians in a good economic condition. We just left. We were just living the era of cash scarcity. We were just living the era of fuel scarcity at the same time. And then when you were coming, it wasn't like the election also went smoothly. It had its own challenges. And then you threw the removal of subsidy on our chest like, oh, they are Nigerians, they have tough skin and they can deal with it. We do not have to keep, promoting the narration of Nigerians can always adjust to whatever difficulties that you throw at them. Things are really beginning to go from really bad to becoming really worse. because if that is the thing that you're starting with, you should have actually, have some things on ground that, maybe like things that Nigerians could actually, fall back on as you're removing the subsidy. You're not subsidizing transportation. You're not subsidizing the price of food. You're not subsidizing the price of services. Everything that you met on ground were not actually in good shape. No thanks to, COVID-19, no thanks to the recession. Nigeria just survived about 2 consecutive recessions at the same time. Now, what are the people, suffering this is that they are average Nigerians, and then the next thing you want to throw at them is a removal of subsidy that also equates to like almost 300% increase in the price of commodities. I do not think the time that was announced was actually a good time. I think it should have tested the water, see what it is like, have meetings with the concerned stakeholders like the marketers, the transport workers, and anybody that is actually concerned as long as the removal of subsidy is concerned, not just throwing it at them and say, okay, then let's do this first, and then we'll now come to the round table and start discussing. It wasn't a good time. It may be a good decision, but not a good time.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that we're back at the era, and Nigeria seems to always fall into that situation of right intention, wrong approach, or right approach, wrong timing. And
Exactly.
It happens all the time. We just came out of a cash crunch, and we're talking about how the approach was wrong, the timing was wrong, and everything. This timing was absolutely wrong. Was it the right thing to do? Probably. Was this the right way to go about it? Probably not. But the timing was not good enough. I mean, on the first day, and you throw everyone into panic. And I feel like it should have been a situation of a corresponding review of the minimum wage. The minimum wage in Nigeria, for God's sake, is 30,000 naira. How would a person survive with 30,000 naira with a more than double, increase in fuel price and corresponding increase in price of other commodity?
Well, before Shewa comes in, I just want to chip this in. So the question, even though I, of course, understand, let me play devil's advocate now. Even though I understand that it's important that the timing is key, but then many have asked when exactly is the best time to push certain policies in Nigeria.
I don't know, maybe after a review.
If we are to face it, I understand, but let's face it, when is the best time? I don't think there's ever a best time. I mean, if you look at it, yes, you might want to say you put some palliatives in ground. The current government
never
want to call it palliatives now. They use the word interventions.
I would never advise we bring the issue of palliatives, because if
they call it interventions anyway.
They know what comes
doesn't
with
work.
palliative.
It doesn't work.
People use it for their birthday celebrations. People use it for their housewarming. You know what happened during COVID. So palliative, you cannot even trust politicians with palliative at this point in time, Dapo.
But again, going back to the timing, do you think there's ever a perfect time?
Well, maybe not. But really, let's look at the situation of things. We're trying to take away poverty, but we're throwing people deeper into it.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you think people will survive in this? And it is not as if, I feel like it should have been progressive, right? Okay, fine. We're going to remove the subsidy. And not to forget that the person who made that statement was someone who fought against this some time ago, right? I'm not saying that the time would never come that there would be need to do that, but I'm saying progressively maybe, when the economy has been lifted a little bit.
Has there ever been a time that the economy has been lifted?
Well,
Some have argued,
I would want to believe that. I would want to believe that this approach is to actually lift the economy.
Some have actually, exonerated the government in this, because according to, of course, the information on ground, the outgone administration made provision till the end of June,
yes,
right? Before this particular decision takes effect, even though they did not make provision for it in the budget. Meaning that, logically, if we are to follow that analysis, it means we should be buying it at the old pump price.
Exactly. So why is NNPC are now seeing
till the end of June? So what happens? Don't you think
price?
that's a people problem and not the government?
It's actually the government, because
I mean the marketers, not the people, not the consumers now.
Because the marketers are taking a cue from the announcement by NNPC, which is the government-owned. Now, of course, now it's not a commercial-owned business, but now it's the national oil company in Nigeria. And then the announcement followed the announcement by the president saying after the subsidy had been removed, now their new price is 488 naira. So why not wait till the end of June? At least Nigerians will actually prepare their mind, okay, this is coming. So maybe after the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidy, the president comes to announce an increase in the minimum wage. the president comes to say, okay, transportation will be subsidized, this will be subsidized and all that, then we know that by the end of June, we are facing the reality. Not that after the announcement of removal of subsidy, the next thing that follows is almost a 300% increase in price. That's ridiculous. So if an NMPC
honestly,
is selling for 488, what do you expect from an ordinary price-based business
So
owner?
honestly, I also believe that we cannot take away the fact, especially I don't even think it's a Nigerian's problem. I think that when that announcement was made, it is normal for every single Nigerian to start thinking of panic buying. So they're now coming out and saying, don't panic buy, everything will be fine. It is not possible. I would want to buy fuel, as much fuel as I can, for 184 before I wake up the next morning and see that it's 488. So there's no way that it would have been evaded, that people would not panic buy. So immediately it was announced, panic buying even further drove it out of, made it scarce. And I think that was where the whole thing started crumbling. So again, I believe that it should have been progressive.
Well, also, a country like Nigeria is talking about removal of subsidy. And then, I do not want to have to talk about Dangote refinery. It's a private investment. We had zero investment running. You want to remove the subsidy, then you should have something to fall back on, like I said earlier. If we at least had one of the refineries running and able to actually meet up to the demands of the 100% demands across Nigeria, maybe then it would have been okay for the president to say that, yes, we want to remove subsidy. But refineries, the previous administration is talking about, reviving the refineries, and we don't know even where that stands at the moment. Now, all attentions are turning into Dangote refinery, which is a private investment. So imagine we do not have a Dangote in Nigeria. What are we going to talk about? So it means that when something, God forbid, something like COVID comes again, that is increasing the global oil price on the global oil market, it means that we may likely be buying fuel at 1,000 naira per liter. That's what it means. So, how do you now question the effect of this on an average Nigerian?
Shewa, I think right now, part of the, I call it mitigative measures that the government that's the government of Nigeria has put forward, is that they've made licensing when it comes to importing fuel, not just of professional oil marketers right now, even organizations. If you feel that you can get your fuel somewhere, at a cheaper rate, pick up a license and import it. Which is a good thing.
But we're not seeing the effect already. This will take a long time.
We know these things take time, but also let's not forget something. One of the reasons why this decision just had to be taken is a chunk of the budget goes into financing these things.
Which
and they saw a lot of irregularities. You would say Nigerians consume about 5,000 barrels. We're 5 million barrels a day, whereas it's less than just 2-point-something million. The rest is exported to neighboring countries, and they buy fuel at subsidized rates. Even though, to a large extent, I would say it's a bitter pill that we have to swallow. I'm feeling the effect. Before, I used to buy fuel that's 30 liters of 5,000 Nigerian naira, right? With 5,000, the last time I bought it, 5,000 was 10 liters. It was like the guy and told me we're done. I almost went bonkers. But I understand that is the price we must pay. Also, I think Nigerians to have a role in this. Sometimes, we just, even though the government makes announcements, if they give a timeline, we don't need to, panic buy and increase prices.
It's been a good one. Thank you so much, Adesewa, for joining us, and hopefully there is an end to this crisis very soon. Well, shortly we'll be taking the forecast. You stay with us on Report Desk Africa.